Hey everyone, David here, and I've got some exciting news to share. I've decided to write a book, and I've entitled it Psychosocial Hazards Are Real. The book is intended to help clarify the fact that psychological safety cannot be achieved without paying attention to the psychosocial hazards people are being exposed to. Despite how much individuals might be interested in treating others with kindness, dignity, and respect, many cultures are so full of psychosocial traps that no psychological health and safety effort can ultimately succeed. But to address psychosocial hazards, you first have to know what they are, and you have to have some idea what to do to address them. Though the book won't be 100% complete until the spring of 2025, I'd like to share a unique opportunity to reserve a copy during the book presale campaign. The campaign will run from September 16th to October 18th, 2024. This will be an opportunity to get one of the first copies of the book, tickets to the book launch event, and other opportunities to learn more about psychosocial hazards. For more information, you can go to my personal LinkedIn or Facebook page, or the LinkedIn, Facebook, or webpage for ID2 Solutions. Don't miss out on this unique opportunity. Now, back to this episode of the podcast. Notwithstanding the conversations we have on this podcast, there's still a tremendous amount of stigma associated with conversations about mental health. This is particularly true for men in general and for Black men specifically. We'll talk with an author and advocate for Black male mental health up next on this episode of the Psych, Health, and Safety USA podcast. From Flourish DX, this is the Psych, Health, and Safety USA podcast. As workplace mental health has become a global priority, there's a greater focus on addressing psychosocial hazards. Each week, we look at psychological safety from an occupational health and safety perspective. Let's talk psychological health and safety. Welcome to this week's Psych, Health, and Safety USA podcast. I'm your host, Dr. I. David Daniels, and I want to thank you for tuning in. Each week, we seek to increase awareness of the importance of psychological health and safety by learning from the lived experiences, research, and expertise of our guests, as well as advocating strategies to reduce harm and minimize vulnerability to psychosocial hazards in the American workplace. So, Black men in the United States can face many challenges when seeking mental health due to several factors, including the Black community has historically viewed mental illness as a sign of weakness or lack of faith. The stigma can make Black men feel ashamed and embarrassed to seek help, and can lead them to not being open to discussing or acknowledging their mental health. One study found that 63% of Black people believe that a mental health condition is a sign of personal weakness. The stigma can also be rooted in slavery, when it was commonly thought that enslaved people were not sophisticated enough to develop mental health disorders. Black men may also face barriers to mental health due to poverty, racism, implicit bias, and other factors, even from our medical providers. These are less likely than white people. They are less likely than white people to receive guideline consistent care or to be included in mental health research. As a result, Black men are more likely to use emergency rooms or primary care for mental health problems. So this episode is different because we actually have a mental health advocate, someone who's had some experience in this area, and we're going to have a conversation, but we're going to have it specifically about Black men. Now, I suspect that much of what we chat about will have applicability to other groups of individuals, but today this is about mental health for Black men. So we're going to start with an introduction of my guest, by my guest, with a question. And the question this time is, who is Mark Tuggle?
Who is Mark Tuggle? That's a question I've been answering every day for the last 64 years. My birthday is August the 6th. And Mark Tuggle is a child of God. Mark Tuggle is free spirit. Mark Tuggle is a complex individual. Mark Tuggle is deeply wounded and spiritually awakened. Mark Tuggle is a Leo, so I never met a mirror I didn't like. I don't think it's all about me. I think it's only about me. So I like that question, Dr. Daniels. There's many facets to my humanity. But like James Baldwin said, I want to be a good man and an honest writer.
Wow, that's I asked that question about who is and then fill in the person, really, trying to leave the space open for people to share kind of who they are. And, people have differing levels of comfort with that. Yeah, and again, not right or wrong, but just different. And people describe themselves in very different ways. So I appreciate you sharing that with us. One more question I ask everyone: what does psychological health and safety mean to you? When you hear that, what visions come into your head when you hear that phrase?
Psychological health and safety is not something that I've spent a lot of time thinking about. So just in the moment, I think of trauma, I think of pain, I think of woundedness, I think of patriarchy, I think of privilege, I think of white supremacy, I think of colonialism, imperialism, just decades and centuries of lynching, brutality, murder, rape, lot of horrific pain. And safety is an opportunity. I think the safest place on the planet is in the womb of the mother. Nobody can hurt me when I'm in her womb. But as soon as they cut that umbilical cord, all hell breaks loose. And someone hurts me, and if I don't have the capacity to forgive, I'll hold on to that hurt for the rest of my life.
Wow, that's pretty powerful. Pretty powerful. Psychological health and safety has been, this interest of mine over the last 3 or 4 years. But I've come to conclude that no one, and a lot of my conversations, both here on the podcast and in general, are around what happens in the workplace. But this is not only in the workplace, but any place. Human beings don't show up to social settings as blank slates. They just don't. They don't. Something happened before they got there. Even if it's just what you talked about, going from the womb to the rest of the world. So something was going on before that. And to your point, when people, and I won't say if, I find it difficult to think of any human being that hasn't experienced pain, that hasn't felt hurt, and in many cases hasn't been traumatized by something at some point in their life. There may be somebody out there. I just haven't met that person. Could barely conceive of who that person is, and we have these kinds of global traumas that affect us all: 9/11, the pandemic, the economic downturn, the whatever that affect everybody. And then on top of that, you do have some of us whose lived experience or that of our ancestors is even more horrific. And we carry that around with us. It even when it's quote unquote dealt with, it has to be dealt with because part of it's still there. So tell me a little bit about what stimulated your interest in mental health. I don't, I sometimes talk to people about their professions and interests, and rarely do I find a person who came out of the womb and said, I'm going to be this or do this. So something stimulated that interest. So what stimulated your interest in the conversations around mental health?
Well, about 5 years ago, God put something on my spirit, and that was to break the cycle of generational trauma in my family and to be of service to my community. Because I was clinically diagnosed with mental illness over 29 years ago. for a long time, I never talked about it. James Baldwin says that not everything in his face can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it's faced. So I didn't face what was going on inside me for a long time. And then I began to face it with therapy, journaling, prayer, meditation. And eventually I decided, let me write something, maybe a haiku, a poem, an essay. I did not anticipate a book. I did not anticipate a career. I did not anticipate being on podcasts and people from all over the world. I just needed to free myself for a moment. Because that trauma, I think Resmaa Menakem calls it the trauma in the body. You know, he talks about white body supremacy that we carry, like you said, we carry it with us. You know, when I leave out my door, I don't leave it in my bedroom. It travels, trauma travels. So I began on the journey to writing, and I decided maybe I should invite and include and welcome other brothers from across the diaspora to share their stories, because quite often Black men are not documented, researched, funded, etc. when it comes to mental health. You know, if you look on social media, you mostly will hear the views of people who don't look like me and you. And they speak for me and you, or they think they do. So I wanted to change that. And I have a personal essay, and there's 30 men, and they are brilliant, bold, Black, right? This is not people of color. This is Black men. It's very specific. You know, I think Toni Morrison said that if there's a book you want to write and it has not been written, then you must write it. Because I've had women say to me, well, how come you didn't include Black women? Write your own book. Write your own book, then we can have another conversation. So that's what I did. I decided to, become an author and editor. And here we are, 5 years later, books on Amazon, paperback, Kindle. I'm excited. Muhammad Ali says that service to others is the rent you pay for your room here on earth. So that's my passion is being of service to humanity. And if we can prevent one Black male from dying by suicide, because today is Suicide Prevention Day, September Suicide Awareness Month, and Prevention Month, then our collective pain will not be.
Right. Yes. I really like what you shared about, and I hadn't heard that quote before, that, if a book needs to be written, then you should write it, because I some of this, at least in my own personal experience, is breaking free from the expectations of folks outside myself and focusing on what works and what's important to me. And I think that, from a psychological perspective, there's a lot of effort spent on trying to, again, if going back to the workplace again, how do we, look at that group over there and fix them and change them and make them different? No, I think all this starts with me working on me. That's where it starts. It's first of all meeting myself. I share that I didn't really meet myself until I was 26. Part of it is because my brain wasn't formed yet. I didn't know that at the time. But I got introduced to myself and made, the first decision that I can chronicle in my entire life, that it was mine and I was willing to take the consequences one way or the other, because it's something I need to do. And, and interestingly, we, we share a few similarities. I also would be so I'm about a month younger than you. So we have similar life experiences and exposures in terms of what was going on in the world. And I think it's really, 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 really important for people to look inside and figure out what's going on with them. And then to the extent they have additional capacity, work on trying to help other people. Because I think sometimes we skip over that. And at least in my experience, there's a lot of conversation in our community about your responsibility to other people, and you have to do this, you have to be there for other people. I can't be there for other people if I don't even know who I am. So who am I taking to these discussions if I don't know what's going on with me and haven't faced what's really going on with me?
That's been my experience too. doing a lot of internal work. I was in therapy on and off for 10 years. And at the time, this was in 95, I thought therapy was for rich, crazy white people. And I know that's not an original thought. But I had a friend who I was attracted to her spirit. She had made some changes in her life. And she just said, Mark, I would suggest. She didn't demand. It wasn't like beat me over with. She didn't make me feel bad. She didn't blame me or shame me the way people do today. She said, I would suggest you consider it. And I did. And it was the best decision of my life. And I've had more than one therapist. And I've had a few horror stories. Because some therapists need to be in therapy themselves, in my opinion. And through my experience, but it really helped me a lot. So I'm glad I was able to do that for myself.
Right. Right. So you talked about, and again, the fact that you're sharing the fact that you're in therapy for 10 years. I went to therapy for the first time, would have been about 2010 or so. And frankly, I did like folks do. Some people don't like going to the dentist until they get a toothache. Well, from a mental health perspective, that's often when people seek therapy is when things are going horrible. When there's something that, so I at the time was, and I talk about this a little bit in the book that I'm, writing. And I talk about the experience at the time. And the way I describe it is I felt like I had been lynched. Metaphorically, that's what it felt like to me. I was in an organization as the only black person. I was supposedly in charge, and but I felt, there was a couple of things that happened where I was basically hung out to dry for doing what I thought was my job. And when you point out to people that, hey, you guys are involved in federal tax evasion, perhaps you should stop doing that. you know, so for doing that, I get the public lynching. And but when sometimes when you use those kind of words, people, oh, well, is that really what you? Yeah, that's what it felt like to me. That's and I talk a little bit about some of the details, and it's not to minimize the actual occurrence, but it's an association that I think some people will get. Other might feel a little bit differently about, and that's one of the things that caused me to find myself in therapy. And my first therapist was a white male, which made the therapy more difficult because I saw in him the very people I felt were traumatizing me. And he and as I think about it, he wasn't a bad dude at all. I mean, I think he was probably, but it was me. It was my experience, my perception about what was going on. It just didn't match up for me. And yeah, but back to that, how did you, when you were given the suggestion how did you overcome some of the stigmatization that goes along with even entering therapy in the first place? How did you overcome that?
Honestly, I was so broken. I didn't have time to think about gender and orientation and culture and age and none of the stuff that people think about today. Because you could go shopping for a therapist today and be very specific about who you want to partner with. But at that time, it was 3 months after I've been diagnosed HIV positive. So I'm already obsessed with dying, like Tupac and Biggie. You know what I mean? Like every day, that's all I thought about was dying. So therapy was just an idea. It wasn't a reality. My therapist was heterosexual. She was a female. She was from Bosnia. She was younger than me. We was completely different. And she said, I'm here to assist you with the quality of your life. That spoke to my spirit. I never felt that way with anybody. To assist, not control, you know what I mean? Not manipulate, not demand, not badger, not be lynched, right? So yeah, so I was open. I was open minded. We sat down, and I never missed a session for 3 years. We sat down once a week for 45 minutes, and we went in. We didn't even talk about HIV. We talked about the little boy on the inside who felt unloved, unappreciated, misunderstood, um, rejected, abandoned, betrayed. Um, just I had a lot of conflicting feelings about myself that I had never expressed with another human being, including myself, because it's not an isolated experience. We're having a conversation, but just because I admit it, don't mean I believe it. You know what I mean? It's a journey. So I'm grateful for the experience.
Wow. Wow. So the 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 brokenness itself kind of puts you in a place where, wow, I'm just trying to process that, what you shared myself, because I again, it's goes back to the example I was using with the toothache, that, that's, they're certainly not the same thing, but sometimes the pain becomes so bad. It's either this or something even worse. And it can't be much worse than what I'm going through at the time,
Exactly.
you know?
That was my motivation. I was just so down. I had a friend, and I said, I keep digging myself in a hole, and I keep digging and digging, and I get deeper and deeper. And he said, "Let go of the shovel." That just blew my mind because I didn't know I was holding on to my own pain. I didn't even believe I had a choice about it. This was my lot in life. I was going to take it to my grave unmarked. But now, I'm like the Ohio players. I want to be free.
Oh boy, absolutely, absolutely. So, what what makes this conversation about mental health different for Black men, in your
Oh,
view?
wow. I mean, Black men are so, I mean, we are feared, but we're also um, pathologized. We are desired. People want to be Black until the police come. You know what I'm saying? So our culture is co-opted all over the world, especially with Kwanzaa. Everybody got dreadlocks and dashikis. You know what I mean? People who don't look like us, all of a sudden they got our hair and our lips, and like Bo Derek in the movie 10 with the braids. You know what I mean? Stuff like that. But I just think that Black men have the greatest stories never told. And it's something about telling your story that's really powerful, empowering. And I just think that I've never seen a book where Black men spoke freely about their mental health from their own words. Right? This is Black Men Unplugged. It's not BT, it's not CNN, it's not Fox News, right? It's not sponsored by McDonald's or Nike or Verizon. So I didn't have that burden of trying to please a corporate sponsor or anybody like that. They were like, this is who I am. This is what I've been through. And my job, like Toni Morrison said, when she became editor at Random House, her job was to just let them tell their story, to be the conduit, not the vessel. Because some people wrote some stuff that I disagree with philosophically, but it's their story, not mine. I had to get out the way. And that's not my natural state of mind. So there was a lot of humility and restraint and surrender that I had to practice in just being an author and editor. But I'm grateful, man. These brothers, they go in.
Yeah, that boy, this is very helpful. I gotta tell you, I think I mentioned that, before we push record, that it is rare for me personally to have opportunity to talk about these kinds of topics with folks like myself, at least from a racial and gender identity perspective. Because if you were to ask me who am I, I've got multiple ways that I see myself as well. I'm a pretty complex person, but I want to be a complex person. I'm not just simple. Uh, but it's difficult to find opportunities for for conversations about how I'm feeling with black men because of this. A lot of it is relates to the stigma and the things that I heard. I've never met my dad, uh, ever. And my uncles were both alcoholics. My grandfather was an alcoholic, so I didn't really take well to them, um, just because of the way that I saw them behave. So this learning how to be a male was something I kind of had to figure out, And matter of fact, when particularly with my youngest son, I had these really, uh, kind of vulnerable conversations with him, and I tell him that I didn't have a dad around. I'm doing what I believe to be right, but if it for some reason doesn't work for you, please just say something, and I'll try something else because I'm doing what I think we should be doing, but it's got to work for you. And I said a lot of that because those are the things that I wanted to hear. I wanted to just have people kind of understand it, or even if they didn't understand, create the space so I could share what was going on with me. And it's just really inspiring to be able to meet and hear of someone such as yourself who is creating this space so people, again, to your point, can tell their stories. Because a lot of these stories are told, again, another point that you made, that people, particularly in their workplaces, they go into these workplaces, and these workplaces, in many cases, were never designed for them to be healthy and safe and comfortable, ever. They weren't. They were designed to make money, and that's it. And, to include companies that were built. I have a friend who works for an insurance company right now that's been around since the, mid to late 1800s. And one of the things that they did when they first started was insure, people like you and me. So how can we expect, however many years later, that they are going to be healthy and safe for people that they used to think as property? How's that going to happen? And so again, I think it's really important to create these spaces where people can share their stories in the ways that really, really, really impact them.
Do you need more psych health and safety in your life? Then head over to the Flourish DX Academy for several free on-demand e-learning courses. If you're an internal professional, follow Flourish DX on Eventbrite to register for any of our free fortnightly interactive webinars. Our flagship professional practice program is also exclusively available for internal professionals. The 12-week course blends theory, applied practice, and interaction with other professionals through live lectures and a monthly community of practice session. Find out more about all these learning opportunities or inquire about a bespoke in-house training at the Flourish DX Academy. www.45003.org. Now back to this episode.
So if if I'm an organization who says, I say I'm interested in creating, healthy spaces mentally for my black male members, whoever they are, what kind of advice, pointers, thoughts would you share with them?
Well, I would make sure that black men are the change agents and the policymakers. Because quite often our voices are left out of decision making, like the Constitution and Declaration of Independence and so forth and so on. We're just reacting emotionally to what's already there. And we can see it's not safe, but gotta feed the kids, pay the mortgage, so forth and so on. So we hold on to jobs that we hate and loathe for 10, 15, 20 years to get that pension. But by that time, we're so messed up psychologically, you can't even enjoy life. So I think it's important that black men are able to be autonomous, and to be respected, to be valued, and trying to establish some guidelines in the spirit of community, where not one person is, the master. Let's have some discussion about how this could benefit everybody, not just me and my grandkids. The way the Supreme Court is run. You know what I'm saying? I don't think you should have that job for life. Then let's rotate every 20, 25 years. You know what I mean? It's a different world we're living in today. So I think it's important that Black men are making those decisions, establishing those guidelines, and inviting other Black men in for their perspective.
Sure, sure. Yeah, and again, a point that I've heard you make kind of more than once that's important is, and being specifically, this is not, there is nothing wrong with having discussions about people of color or BIPOC people. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you are attempting to create a safe space for Black men, then Black men have to be involved in the conversation. You can't, and I say this often, you can't make it safe for me, and you can't do safety to me either. You have to do safety with me. I have to be involved in the conversation, whether it be physical, psychological, it doesn't really matter. I have to be involved because you can't do it on my behalf. Let's create this affinity group and we'll start it and we'll pick who's going to be the leaders and we'll pick who the executive sponsors are and we'll put this in place. I found it really interesting when right after George Floyd was killed, these big corporations threw money at, we're going to throw $10 million at this and $100 million at that. And now a few years later, they kind of took a lot of their money back, but we're going to throw money at it and we're going to do these performative things and we're going to create this safe space for our Black employees. And then they went around and found the people who would go along with it are the folks who are looking to climb the organization, the people who would agree with them and create these spaces that really just weren't that. And a lot of those efforts have failed. They failed because they weren't really inclusive in the beginning for the people that they said they wanted to help. And it's better. It's better when we do these things together.
I mean, Dak Prescott of the Dallas Cowboys just signed a contract, 4 years, $240 million, right? The NFL athletes are predominantly Black, 60, 65, 70%, while all the owners are white. So that impacts their safety and their health. But because we're getting paid, we go, oh, okay, I got paid. Now I got generational wealth. But do you have generational health? You know what I mean? Because your career may end in 5 or 6 years, and you may be in a wheelchair, on a cane. You may get, every athlete goes through depression once they retire. Most of them don't talk about it, which leads to alcohol, strip clubs, gambling, food, so forth and so on. There's no healthy models. There are very few healthy models of how to live, period. And then when you're successful, you're making all this money, you're on television, and people know your name. All the owners are white. The owners are white. That's plantation. And I love sports. I'm there for it. Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Thank God for Colin Kaepernick, but he's not back in the league. You know what I mean? Because he exposed them. And they don't like that. No. Jerry Jones is not going to give up his job to LeBron James and Jay-Z and Oprah and Beyonce. Trust me, you can get enough Black billionaires now to buy a team, but those white owners are not going to let their wealth and their patriarchy and privilege go. I wouldn't expect them to. It doesn't benefit them. So when it comes to health and safety, who's making the decisions? Who's making this? Who's creating the laws, the policies, the guidelines, right? Who says, okay, when you're hurt, this is how we're going to treat you, as an athlete or as a human being? You get hit, they give you something, you go right back in the game. Concussion? Oh, no, you have a headache, not a concussion. That's the world that we live in. So I'd like to see more Black men in positions of ownership, leadership, power, influence, where they can really have an impact that lasts for generations. And so kids can go, oh, I can aspire to be not just somebody who sings and raps, but I can own the team, or I can be the principal of the school. I can be the vice president of the bank. I can do something other than, there's so many things I can do, but I need to see myself reflected because it's hard to be what you can't see. You know what I mean? So my father, for example, he dropped out of school in the 10th grade. He was fought the Korean War. He told me he didn't have time to pray. You know what I mean? And when he came home, there was no parade. There was no podcast. Oprah wasn't there to talk to him. Do you know what I'm saying? And so he decided that he wanted to take care of his family. So he decided he said to be successful, do something that other people need. My father had a furniture business for 20 years, but people have a need to sit down, right? That went right over my head. That was his tool, And he didn't finish school. He didn't have a business plan. Didn't have a business card. He didn't have credentials, but he had an idea. And his brother was a carpenter, and he cultivated a business, a Black-owned business in Chicago, where I was born and raised. So his work ethic somehow got into me. He transitioned 15 years ago. He would be so proud of me now. But just as an example, he showed me what was possible. And I think it's important to reimagine. That's why I said at the beginning, can we reimagine another way of thinking and being as Black?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I also, this causes me to think back on what you said earlier about we're both kind of mentioning the importance of doing that internal work. So when the opportunity arises, what I've seen, unfortunately, is that Black men get an opportunity to influence groups, systems, organizations, companies, whatever it might be. And they do the very same thing that the other guy did, that the white guy did, that the whoever did. They do the very same things because often they've not done the internal work to know what's really valuable to me personally. And again, that's, that all comes with a cost. When I had opportunity to be a leader, I thought, well, I'm going to do the things that I complained about when I was a follower. And but as I started to implement some of those, I found out, well, now I know why people didn't do it, because it's hard. It's hard to get into a system, again, that wasn't built for you, that wasn't built to keep you safe or to keep you, comfortable or to care about your feelings, and transition it or cause it to be something that it was never built to be. It can be done, but there's a price to be paid to do it. Are you willing to pay the price to do that? And, and frankly, I'd rather it's important to have people who have done that work and will stand for what they really believe and not just talk about it, but be about it. Because otherwise we just get this same cycle repeated over and over and over again. Well, I'll dance the jig, I'll say the thing so I can get the spot. So then I can go in there and grin and smile with everybody else and allow the exploitation, allow the unsafe conditions, allow the trauma that folks are being exposed to continue, because I can't speak up because I'll lose my job. And so, and sadly they end up losing themselves and some recognize it later on that I should have spoken up. But why not recognize it early when you have the opportunity to actually do something about it? At least my thought.
No, I agree with you. Everyone doesn't have the same level of awareness. And that's not wrong. It's how it is. Yeah. So I think we need to relearn and unlearn. Go back. I think James Baldwin said, your crown has already been bought and paid for. All you must do is put it on your head. Because our ancestors kind of taught us a few things, but I think we kind of lost our way, including myself. I've been to hell and back more than once. I'm here through grace and mercy. Grace and mercy. Yeah, I thank God every day. Every day, that's the first thing I do is thank you. Thank you for waking me up. And not just physically, but emotionally, mentally, spiritually. So being of service to me is more important than making a lot of money. I'm not trying to be rich or famous. I want to get paid, right? But that's not my motivation for what I'm. Yeah, yeah. So I'm really clear about that because I used to feel guilty about the idea of helping other people and making money about it. It kind of spoke to my sense of unworthiness for a long time. I didn't think that was fair. I had a lot of moral complexity, but I've been able to work that out, and I'm present in your presence, and I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. So now my nephews and cousins, they know they have an uncle in New York who's being of service, and if they need information, they need resource, they need somebody to talk to, I got your back.
So, talk briefly about your book, Cultural Silence, Wounded
The
Souls.
book is dun, 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 dun. It's an intergenerational anthology. That was important too, to include, different voices. There's 30 men, different backgrounds. They write about anxiety, depression, grief, isolation, loss, PTSD, stress, trauma, drug misuse, paranoid schizophrenia, suicide ideation, other issues. That's a lot, right? That's a lot right there. Yeah, 30 men. They write about their personal experiences, their professional views. And the book also has a list of resources that are intended to answer three important questions. What can I do? Where can I go? And who can I talk to? Those are three questions I didn't have the answer to when I was diagnosed. But I got the answers now. And I want to share with the universe, So I've had women who bought it for their husband, their brother, their nephew, their son. I have a neighbor in my building who's 12 years old. He read my book and he said, thank you. My job is done. My job is done, man. There are a few guys in the book who have written about their multiple attempts to die by suicide. And I say die by suicide and not commit suicide. Because to say someone committed suicide is to imply that person is a criminal, that they're irresponsible, that they're unethical, that they're selfish. Because people have all these judgments about why somebody, there's a lot of famous people and unfamous people who did that, took their own life. And people have all these moral judgments about why and how could you and this and that. Because they make it about them. You know what I mean? They make it about them real quick. And they're on TV talking about it, and they think they have all the answers. Well, they have all the answers. The person's gone, but you have all this wisdom. You know what I'm saying? So thank God they are alive to tell their stories in their own language. I'm just an editor, but I didn't change their story. I may have moved the comma, shortened the paragraph. You know what I mean? But they told their story. They spoke with their spirit. And I know they're going to touch somebody. People have really told me this book has helped them because this is something that we don't talk about. It's a taboo subject. And Black people have a lot of taboo subjects. This is one of them. This is one of them. So I'm excited.
Wow, that's again, that's deep on multiple levels. on multiple levels, again, first of all, just to be able to approach the topic is a thing, and to be able to approach it from multiple views, because there are those who think that pick your group, Black men, Hispanic women, gay kids, whatever. And we try to lump people together and suggest that they're monolithic, and they are not. Even within these groupings, whatever way we group people, and we all have this, intersectionality of being, again, multiple things. There's multiple aspects of us that, and I personally, I haven't found any one group that relates to all of them. That they don't. I mean, so it's often necessary to go to different places to have different conversations because they're important to me. But in this case, you've taken all of these voices together, kind of centralized them to be able to help people hear all of these 30 black men. And, again, to your point, they're not the only people that have had suicidal ideation or have been diagnosed with, a diagnosable mental illness, or they're not the only ones. They just happen to have this similarity that you chose for the book. As a matter of fact, my dissertation, the title of my dissertation was The Lived Experience of Black Workers' Exposure to Psychosocial Hazards in the American Workplace. And chose that because, and again, it's an experience that I've had myself. It's a group that I understood, and I want to get the dissertation done. Because they tell you if you can get in there and just write, you'll never get the thing done, and you'll end up working on it for 10 or 12 years. I still did that anyway. But I think it's important to expand these conversations outside of just the typical group. And again, the typical group is a group of probably middle-aged to older white men having these conversations. And again, I try to be real clear. I'm not saying I don't have good things to say, but everything just doesn't apply to me. Some of it I just can't relate to, and they can't relate to me. And I think we're also missing out on the voices that have been unleashed by your book and by your efforts. Wow.
And also, Dr. Daniels, I don't speak for all Black men, but there are some brothers who believe they do. And to me, that's dangerous. And not just in the pulpit. You know what I mean? I mean, how many podcast hosts do we have? And it's like people have a microphone and they're going to speak for the whole planet. That's really dangerous.
It is. I agree. Yeah, but again, the definition of a psychosocial hazard in my research is a psychosocial factor that's perceived or experienced by the person exposed as a threat to them. You can't tell me what a psychosocial hazard to me is because you don't know. You can't know. It's not possible. It's my perception and my experience.
And you can't tell me how I feel.
You can't tell me how I feel. You cannot.
Don't tell me my feelings are wrong.
Absolutely.
That's part of the challenge too, is getting people to be present. Like, you don't have to say nothing. Just listen. You know what I mean? I'm not asking you to save me. I called a friend of mine and he said, "How you doing?" I said, "I'm depressed." He said, "What's wrong?" I said, "Nothing's wrong. I'm depressed." Well, something got to be wrong. So, I'm not doing the spiritual ping pong. I'm not trying to explain and apologize. Even if you don't understand, that's fine too. But I'm telling you, I'm depressed. Nothing happened. You know what I mean? Like, the house caught on fire. I'm depressed. It don't last. I have moderate depression. Some people have major depression. There's different levels. Some people have an illness. Some people just have a mental health. It's different. But he called me, and I was honest. I'm depressed in this moment. But oh my God. Now I'm angry. now I'm depressed and annoyed and irritated. You know what I'm saying? So some people don't know it's okay to just to be present. You don't have to, don't save me. And when I say that, I don't mean I don't know how people are gonna take that, but just like let me be in this moment with you. Let me be in this. I'm expressing how I feel or what I perceive. Just listen. You don't please just listen. And that's a hard thing for some people to do because they gotta buy you a greeting card. They gotta give you some soup. You know what I mean? Like, they gotta do something. They gotta fix magic control. It's like, no, I'm not gonna harm myself. I'm just depressed. And if you're a Black man in white America, you're probably depressed too, or you've experienced depression from the time you came out the womb. Not every day, every week, every month, but it's just part of the human condition. And it manifests in maybe feeling sad, maybe feeling unappreciated, maybe feeling isolated. There's different feelings that come with it, but it can be used as an umbrella term. But it's okay. It really is okay to not be okay. It's I can be comfortable being uncomfortable. Do you know what I mean? It's a paradox, but people don't see it that way. I don't have the Kool-Aid smile. Sorry. Yeah, my life is not a PSA.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for all that you shared. But before we go, so if folks want to get more information about the book, about they may want to, have further conversations with you about similar or even unrelated topics. How how might a person do
Well,
that?
the book is on Amazon through paperback and Kindle. I have a website, culturalsilencewoundedsouls.com. That's one word, culturalsilencewoundedsouls.com. The website, super dope, information, resources, videos, documentary, lecture, music, poetry. It's a lot for different people. I'm on LinkedIn every day. That's how we connected. I'm on, I don't call it X. Like, I refuse to call Twitter X. I'm sorry. Malcolm is turning in his grave right now. I'm not doing that. Elon Musk. Okay. So I'm there. I'm on Instagram and Facebook. Not a lot of Facebook. I'm mostly on. Well, you can reach me there on those sites, social media. Mark J Tuggle Tuggle. My name's on the screen. So, and I love to dialogue. I love to connect. I love to be of service. I enjoy this, and I don't have anything to hide. All my business in the street. I ain't got nothing else to tell. You know what I'm saying? It's all out there, man. So, and it's all good because I know once I let go of it, it doesn't hold me hostage anymore. I'm not a prisoner to my past. Deepak Chopra says that until you let go of your past, you cannot tell yourself a new story. And how many of us live in the past? Still stuck in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, and 90s, still mad at somebody because they stole our $5 when we were 8 years old. So now we don't trust nobody. Sometimes therapy can help you unlock all of that past stuff that you wasn't even aware that's been bothering you all this time. You know what I mean? Like DMX said a long time ago before he transitioned, I don't trust nobody but my dog. That's not really a safe place to be in because we live in a world of human beings.
Wow. Well, thank you very much for the conversation / therapy session. I really deeply appreciate the work that you have done and are doing on a topic that impacts a lot of people. And the fact that in this particular case you focused it on Black men is just, it's exciting. So thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Black men and mental health was intentional. So you know exactly what you're going to get. I wasn't trying to do the whole planet. This is not We Are the World. It's not Live Aid and all that. That's not the audience. I'm not Tyler Perry. You know what I'm saying? It's like, look, Black men and mental health. Now, if you're not Black and you don't have a mental health challenge, that's fine too. But if you read one of those stories, Dr. Daniels, I'm sure, I'm not a prophet, but I'm sure you'll find something that you can resonate with. Something. And if not you, someone that you know.
Well, okay. Let me let me turn and have a conversation with those who are watching or listening. If you are watching or listening for the first time, welcome. I hope something that you've heard will bring you back again in the future. Previous episodes of this podcast can be found at psychhealthandsafetyusa.com. You can watch, like, subscribe, and share the podcast on the Flourish DX YouTube page. And please do Join the Psych, Health, and Safety USA movement by connecting and becoming a subscriber on LinkedIn. So until next time, stay tuned and look out for the next episode of the Psych, Health, and Safety USA podcast. Tune in each week for new episodes of the Psych, Health, and Safety USA podcast. If you have a story or know of one that needs to be told, reach out to us on LinkedIn or send an email to david@id2-solutions.com or go to the Flourish DX website at flourishdx.com. We'll see you next time.